I remember my parents and everyone around me saying, you should sell this stuff, man. You actually have this real value. I didn't care if the cards went to zero. I loved it because it was something I couldn't afford to do as a kid that I can do today.
Welcome to the Trading Cards and Collectibles podcast on the Radcast Network. From chasing grails to calling bluffs and going inside the hobby. Are you ready to collect? Let's get at it. Here is your host, Ryan Alford.
Hello, and welcome to Trading Cards and Collectibles here on the Radcast Network. We are your top 5 sports show, regardless of category, already on Apple. We appreciate everyone that's listening. We appreciate everyone sending the messages, the emails. It's been really exciting getting the show off the ground. We're here, episode 10, 11, 12. We're getting up there, and we can't do it without you. And, we're trying to cover the gamut here of the hobby. And there's going to be some insider details given, not only from our guests, but from myself. Because I have, I don't want to call it like a quiet interest. I'm not embarrassed in any way, but I always think of myself as like the sports guy. I did not anticipate getting into this, but I'm actually pretty into it. I'm going to tell you why here in a minute. That's why I go to the master. I got to get the experts for every category. We got Gem Mint Pokémon. That's his username, I guess we'd call it, but it's Zack Browning. What's up, Zack?
How's it going, man? Excited to be here. Happy to be on the Radcast. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Radcast Network. All the best shows. But the hobby is taking off both figuratively in the broad industry and literally here on the show. It's been exciting. And look, man, guilty pleasure. I have to admit, right now, I don't know if I don't enjoy ripping a Pokemon pack more than just about anything else right now. And I couldn't tell you how to play the game. I couldn't even remotely tell you how to play the game of Pokemon. But I enjoy opening the packs, and I do enjoy the artwork. They don't cost $100 a pack like everything else. Clearly, I'm not alone, Zack.
No, ripping Pokemon is a ton of fun. And what's crazy about Pokemon is it's so hard to get a hold of. You're starting to see Pokemon at gas stations. And, you go to Best Buy, Pokemon's there. GameStop's now doing the PSA submissions. It's, Pokemon's just everywhere, and it's almost nearly impossible to get. And the beautiful thing about Pokemon is it doesn't matter if they got a game tonight. They're never going to get injured. Pikachu's always in. Pikachu's never hurt. He's never going to the IR. So the beautiful thing is you can feel a lot more confident when you go long Pikachu, he's going to be there for you.
The scarcity and rarity of them, good grief. Grown men fighting on rows at Walmart over Pokemon packs is a trip.
Yeah, it makes no sense. When we were kids, I collected sports cards for a number of years. Then Pokemon came out as kind of the new fad. And so you have all these people who, I'm in my mid-30s, that, we go back to nostalgia, what we loved as kids and stuff. And so you have all these people who are getting to their mid-30s. They finally got some cash. And what do they want to spend it on? They want to buy that pack they couldn't buy when they were 9 years old. And so I think Pokemon's in its infancy. I think it's got a long way to go. And I think we're just getting started with the hobby.
There's a lot of us, like my generation out there, that collected as a kid. And now the hobby's bigger, brighter, more accessible in some ways, money aside maybe. But we also are at a place where I guess the most 40-year-olds are more economically on better economic footing than they were in their 20s and 30s. So you can sort of afford the increase. And I think it's like this magical 10-year period with all that going on. Now, I can't speak to the generation behind me. Maybe it'll be the same thing, but I think maybe the generation behind me was already when the uptick started to happen, so they've been collecting. But I think there's this, 42 to 52-year-olds that have kids now that are collecting, and you've got this magical, that combined with the bigger money coming in. And so there's like this demographic thing combined with investment thing all hitting.
Yeah, I think for me, like you said, with kids, is kids kind of decide what they like and don't like. You don't really get to pick what the younger generation wants to do. And so they kind of define it for themselves. And there's this beautiful thing where, like the 40-year-olds and the kids get to collect together. And you guys might like different things. And I think there's a lot of other factors like the hobby becoming more global. You have like Ohtani coming in. And how many people in Japan collect baseball cards because of Ohtani and Ichiro and all these guys?
Yep.
And China's just opened the world up for Pokemon cards like 3 or 4 years ago. And it's like, there's a lot of money in China, and a lot of it's flowing to trading cards. So I think the globalization is kind of another big catalyst as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's just starting. Not that it's new, but I think we're going to start to feel those effects in availability and certain things, because there's only so much to go around. If you want to keep scarcity, there's this balance of production and scarcity, right?
Right.
And if you have more global demand and more domestic demand, something's got to give. And so that'll be interesting to sort of watch. I don't think this is a blip or a fad. And this isn't a completely original thought, but one I share, which is the grading aspect has certainly made it more of an asset class too, because you have some amount. The distribution, like you said, where it's available.
It's so weird because they're printing billions and billions of cards a year. And so I was talking to a buddy, I was like, if they're printing so much more, isn't that going to change? And he's like, well, when demand is 20x what's available, you can print 5x more, and demand still is outpacing supply. So even with Pokemon, up in their printing, you can't believe they're printing more today than they've ever printed in the history of Pokemon. Demand is still just so much further beyond. The hobby today is nothing like it was 10 years ago, and it's going to be a really difficult readjustment period whenever supply and demand do even out, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon.
I can't fault it. I mean, I've gotten involved in it from a business standpoint, and so I'm not like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so to speak.
They keep them coming.
Sorry. I'm not waiting in line. I might pay somebody to go wait in line, but I'm not waiting in line.
They put an air tag on the restocker. They're watching.
That. I mean, that's what's crazy, man. That stuff's probably happening.
I started getting back into it around 2012. I'd hop on eBay and I'd buy a first edition base set Pokemon for $90 in a PSA 9. And to me, it was always a good deal if it was under 100. If I was paying over 100, I was getting ripped off. And then slowly, you complete one set, then another set, then you keep expanding your scope. It's really important when you collect to have a defined scope so you don't go bankrupt. And I was doing that, making $20 an hour at the time. And I remember my parents and everyone around me saying, you should sell this stuff, man. You actually have this real value. You have $10,000 a card. You should sell it. You should do something else. And I remember saying, I didn't care if the cards went to zero. I loved it because it was something I couldn't afford to do as a kid that I can do today. You look back over the last 10, 15 years, and you should have sold it many, many times. But because you just had that true passion, I mean, how many people pulled a Giannis 101 and never sold it because they love Giannis? A lot of people, it's a $60,000 card. That could be a mortgage payment or a house. They sell it. And so it's one of those things where it was never really about the money. It was always just about the passion of the hobby.
Okay, someone that's listening that's not into Pokemon, but maybe they're Pokemon curious. What's the best thing about Pokemon versus other things, and how does one sort of start to dabble in Pokemon?
If you truly just want to hop in the hobby and collect, I always say just collect what you love, collect what appeals to the eye, collect, the 10s obviously accelerate more than the 9s, this and that. And the chances are that if you love a card and this and that, there are other people out there that love the same thing for similar reasons.
I'm definitely more of a sports guy, but I'm into Pokemon too. I know more than you would think. I like typically the really artistic ones that are that look like they all look like pieces of art. So that's kind of an odd thing to say, but I think some of them really, the detail and dynamic colors. And, I've been into the new Mega Evolution set because a little different, the vibrant colors being a little different. And then, I don't know, I think the more detail and the more complex the art, the more I like it.
And I think if Pokemon hadn't stepped up their art game the last few years, I don't think the modern market would be anywhere close to where it is today. Because like you said you don't play the game. I don't play the game either. I don't know how to play Pokemon, which is kind of crazy. And I think a lot of people collecting today, I don't think a lot of them play the game either. I think they like the art. They like the collectibility. They like the gamble. They like the chase. They like going for the 10s. And if the art's not cool, why do you want the card?
Let's talk grading. It's an interesting topic, the standardization of, what the card grade is versus, a raw card that could be truly subjective and or, you never know what's.
And for Pokemon, typically over the next 3 to 6 months, you'll see prices decline as things stabilize. Is that Charizard one every 400 packs or one every 1,200 packs? You don't really know right away until you actually start pulling the packs because, things can change with the distribution.
Zach, you full-time collector? You got to be doing some other things.
So I was actually in healthcare for about 10, 15 years on the consulting side. And then I think my passion for the hobby is just so strong. I couldn't go a day without waking up and thinking about the hobby. At lunch, you're thinking about the hobby. At night, you're thinking about the hobby. Then about 2 years ago, I actually left healthcare, and I'm full-time hobby today. I've run a business. It's a private business called Slabsy LLC, and our goal is to try to make it as easy as possible for other businesses to exist in the space. My goal is I want that 6-year-old boy to walk in a card shop and have a fantastic experience. And 20 years later, I want him to still be in the hobby and loving everything about it. And so anything around that, that helps have that kid have a good experience, I think is kind of sort of what we're targeting, what we're trying to do. Just make the hobby a more enjoyable and lively place for all ages. And I give this advice all the time. I think it's really, really important. If something is collectible and it's distributed as collectible and everyone perceives it as collectible, a lot of times it's not really collectible and it never really goes up. But if something is distributed to the masses, where a lot of the people that get the item are not the intended target, so the people that went to that game, I bet you that 90% of them are not card collectors. But because 90% of them got that Otani card, the One Piece, that's going to make that thing so collectible because it's going to slowly drip into the hobby. It's slowly going to leak out.
Collecting versus investing, where's the line? And because I feel like some of the youth are getting too worried about the investing. And not that I think it's great if a kid wants to hustle around and go to dollar bins and turn $1 into 3 or 4 or 5 and do that 100 times. Good for you. I don't have any problem with that aspect, but it does just feels like so transactional.
Yeah.
At all times. And it's the beauty of card shows and everything else that you talked about is, okay, 40-year-olds and 9-year-olds having conversations, and there's no air of who's older or who's wiser. It's the cards are what's on the table, right. And whoever wants to, if you want to do a deal, you can do a deal, but everybody's got knowledge at their fingertips. And what do you want to happen? And I think that's great. The first thing I did when I got back into it was all right, okay, where's the apps? What's making this easier? Because it has, some things have. So I don't think we're far enough along, but we're getting there. But then it's again, walking around and the king of cards I had on the show, he made this point. I agree with him. Everyone at the card shows aren't necessarily the masses because those are the hyper into it. So I don't want to paint this whole picture, but it's just walking around, it gets exhausting. And when I've had tables at shows, it gets a little exhausting with every 12-year-old that thinks of themselves as the dealer. They want 110% of retail for every card they have.
Right.
They want to, lowball every card I have. And it's that's fine. That's the art of negotiation. I'll have it. But it's that seems to just be more the norm than it used to be.
They're watching all the vendor POVs, man. They're coaching them. They're teaching them. They're seeing these vendors say, hey, I only traded 80%, and then they give these free 20% bumps on $1,000 deals. That's free money. I mean, how many times have you worked a day in your life and made less than $200? It's people are making a ton of money these days. And no, you're spot on.
Yeah, you got to set it, forget it, throw it in there. Hey, man, where can everybody keep up with what you're doing? I know you got a good following online, but where's the best place for everyone to follow all that Gem Mint Pokemon's up to? Yeah,
at Gem Mint on Instagram, Gem Mint Pokemon on Instagram. That's the best way. That's where I communicate DMs all day, every day. So reach out to me there. I'm happy to help anyone in the hobby. And one of the biggest things I pride myself on is if anyone ever has any advice or questions, this or that, I love helping people for free. And so people were there for me when I joined the hobby, and I'm happy to give back anytime I can. So reach out and I'll help you if I can.
Zach, guys like you are why the hobby is in good hands. I really appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, guys, you're to find us, collectibles.show. You'll find links to Gem Mint Pokemon, everything Zach's up to. See where he's at in that set building. You never know. You might have a card he needs or need some advice. He is there and one of the good guys in the hobby. You know where to find me, at Ryan Alford, on all the social media platforms. We'll see you next time on Trading Cards and Collectibles. Collectibles.show is where you'll find all of the channels and learn more about what we're doing. And ultimately, hey, we want to hear from you. You do case hits at collectibles.show. We want you to send in your favorite pulls of the week. And here's the difference. This isn't about just value. Hey, we want to see some $10,000 hits. Had a couple of those myself a few months back. But it's not just about the value, it's about what you're collecting. What means something to you? Share a story, share a video of you holding up the card that you hit last week that was your favorite player and you nailed it. So case hits at collectibles.show. Send in those videos. I want to know the stories. We're going to bring them to life here on the show. We're going to do a segment each week once we get rolling and get some videos in where we share that on the show with us. We want to feature you on Collectibles Show.
Thanks for tuning in to the show. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform, and don't miss the full video version on YouTube. You can find us at www.collectibles.show or follow Ryan on Instagram at Ryan Alford. Now get out there and collect yours.